Jake stared at Princess Zara in amazement as her words sank in. The last of her people meant that an entire alien civilization had been destroyed, and she was the only survivor. He could see pain in her star-filled eyes that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. And "Tell me what happened," Jake said, gently pulling his chair closer to her medical bed. Zara's voice was soft and musical as she began her story. "My world was called Zerion, and it was beautiful beyond anything you could imagine. We had crystal cities that reached into the clouds and oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life. Our people lived in harmony with nature for thousands of years." She paused, and Jake could see tears forming in her strange eyes. They looked like liquid starlight as they rolled down her blue-tinged cheeks, but then the Devourers came. She continued. The Devourers were machines created by a long-dead race. They consumed entire worlds, turning planets into fuel for their endless expansion. May tried to fight them, but our weapons were useless against their technology. Jake felt his heart breaking as he listened to her story. He could not imagine losing everything and everyone he had ever known. Zara was completely alone in the universe, and yet she had managed to escape and find Earth. "How did you get away?" Jake asked. "My father, the king, put me in the last working escape pod," she said. "He told me to find a new world where I could start over. I did not want to leave, but he made me promise. To survive, the pod was programmed to search for planets that could support life, and it found Earth." Jake reached out and gently took her hand. The strange tingling sensation returned when their skin touched, but this time it felt comforting rather than alarming. "You're safe now," he told her. "No one will hurt you here." Over the next few days, Jake barely left Zara's side. He brought her food and water and helped Amy monitor her recovery. The alien princess was healing at an incredible rate. Her cuts disappeared completely within 48 hours and her strength returned quickly. Zara was fascinated by everything human. She asked endless questions about Earth and its people. Jake found himself explaining concepts that he had never thought about before, like why humans needed sleep or why the ocean was salty. Her curiosity was infectious and her intelligence was remarkable. She learned to read English in just 2 days by studying books that Jake brought to her medical bay. Amy was amazed at how quickly Zara's brain processed new information. It was clear that her species was far more advanced than humans in many ways. But it was not just Zara's intelligence that impressed Jake. There was something about her personality that drew him in. She was kind and gentle despite all the trauma she had experienced. She showed genuine concern for the well-being of everyone at the research station. When Dr. Collins mentioned that she had been working too many long hours, Zara offered to help with her research. When Lieutenant Bennett talked about missing her family back home, Zara listened with complete attention and offered comfort. Even the maintenance staff found themselves stopping to chat with the alien princess. Jake noticed that Zara seemed most comfortable when he was nearby. If he left the medical bay for more than an hour, she would become anxious and ask Amy when he was coming back. When he returned, she would light up with a smile that made her whole face glow. Her 4th day at the station, Zara was finally strong enough to walk around. Jake gave her a tour of the facility, showing her the laboratories, research equipment, and living quarters. She was amazed by human technology, even though it was primitive, compared to what her people had possessed. The ocean view from the observation deck captured her attention completely. She stood at the large windows for almost an hour, watching the waves and seabirds. Jake stood beside her, enjoying her wonder at Earth's natural beauty. "Your world is magnificent," she said softly. "The colors are so vibrant and alive." Zerion had beauty, but it was different, more crystalline and geometric. "This organic beauty is something new to me." Jake found himself studying her profile as she gazed out at the ocean. Her alien features were becoming more familiar to him, but no less striking. The way her silver hair moved in an invisible breeze, and how her skin seemed to generate its own soft light, made her seem almost magical. That evening, Zara joined Jake and the research team for dinner in the station's common area. She tried human food for the first time and was delighted by the variety of flavors. Her metabolism could process almost any organic matter, so everything was safe for her to eat. The conversation around the dinner table was lively as Zara shared stories about her home world and asked questions about Earth culture. She described Xerion's 3 moons and the aurora-like displays they created in the night sky. She told them about her people's music, which was created by manipulating sound frequencies in ways humans had never imagined. Jake noticed how the other team members were drawn to Zara, just as he was. There was something about her presence that made everyone feel more relaxed and happy. Dr. Collins mentioned later that the station felt different since Zara's arrival. More alive somehow. After dinner, Jake walked with Zara on the station's outer deck. The night was clear and the stars were brilliant above the ocean. Zara pointed to different constellations and told Jake which ones were visible from Xerion. Her knowledge of astronomy was incredible. Somewhere out there, she said, pointing toward a cluster of stars, was my home. Now, there is nothing left but empty space and cosmic dust. Jake felt a surge of protectiveness toward this remarkable woman who had lost everything, yet remained so strong and hopeful. He wanted to comfort her and protect her from any more pain. "You have a new home now," he said. "You're part of our family here at the station." Zara turned to look at him, and Jake was struck again by the depth and intelligence in her starry eyes. "Family," she repeated as if testing the word. "Thank you, Jake Morrison. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever." As they stood together under the stars, Jake realized that his feelings for Zara were becoming more complicated than simple protectiveness. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, but she was also alien and had been through terrible trauma. He pushed those thoughts aside and focused on being the guardian and protector she needed. The morning sky over the Pacific Ocean was clear and blue when Captain Jake Morrison first saw the streak of fire falling from space. He was standing on the deck of his research station, checking the weather instruments, when the burning object crashed into the water 2 miles away. Jake grabbed his binoculars and focused on the spot where the thing had hit the ocean. Steam was rising from the water and strange pieces of metal were floating on the surface. He could see something that looked like a small ship, but it was unlike anything human technology had ever created. Without thinking twice, Jake jumped into his rescue boat and raced toward the crash site. The ocean was calm that morning, and he reached the wreckage in less than 10 minutes. What he found there would change his life forever. The ship was made of a silvery metal that seemed to shimmer and change color in the sunlight. It was about the size of a small car, but shaped like a teardrop, with smooth curves everywhere. Jake had been a ship captain for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Through a clear section that might have been a window, Jake could see movement inside. Someone or something was trapped in there, and they were still alive. He tied his boat to the strange craft and climbed onto its slippery surface. Jake found what looked like a door, but there were no handles or obvious ways to open it. He pressed his hands against the smooth metal, and suddenly it began to glow with soft, blue light. The door dissolved away like mist, revealing the interior of the alien ship. Inside was a single seat, surrounded by lights and controls that made no sense to human eyes. But Jake barely noticed the technology because his attention was completely focused on the person lying unconscious in the pilot seat. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin had a pale blue tint that seemed to glow from within, and her hair was silver white like moonlight. It moved gently around her face. Even though there was no wind, her features were delicate and beautiful in a way that seemed almost too perfect to be real. She was wearing a form-fitting suit made of the same material as the ship, and Jake could see that she was breathing, but very weakly. Blood that sparkled like liquid diamonds was seeping from cuts on her arms and forehead. She needed medical help immediately. Jake carefully lifted her from the pilot seat and carried her to his rescue boat. She was surprisingly light, as if her bones were hollow like a bird. Her skin felt warm despite its blue color, and when he touched her, he felt a strange, tingling sensation run up his arms. As Jake placed her gently in his boat, the alien woman stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered, open for just a moment, and Jake found himself staring into pupils that looked like tiny galaxies filled with swirling stars. She tried to speak, but only soft musical sounds came from her lips before she lost consciousness again. Jake started his boat engine and raced back toward the research station. His mind was spinning with questions and disbelief. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be a momentous occasion for all humanity. But instead, it was just him, alone on the ocean, with a dying extraterrestrial woman. The research station came into view, and Jake could see his team members Dr. Amy Collins and Lieutenant Kate Bennett waiting on the dock. They had obviously seen the crash and were worried about him, but nothing could have prepared them for what Jake was bringing back. Jake pulled up to the dock and called out for help. Amy and Kate rushed over to help him lift the unconscious alien from the boat. Their faces showed the same shock and amazement that Jake had felt when he first saw her. Amy, who was the station's medical officer, immediately took charge. She directed them to carry the alien woman to the medical bay while she started preparing equipment and supplies. Kate stood guard at the door, keeping other staff members away while Amy began her examination. The alien woman remained unconscious while Amy worked to clean and bandage her wounds. The strange, sparkling blood stopped flowing once the cuts were treated, but Amy was worried about internal injuries. Her scanner readings made no sense when applied to alien physiology. Jake sat beside the medical bed, watching over his unexpected patient. He found himself studying her face and wondering what kind of world she had come from. Her features were peaceful despite her injuries, and there was something about her that made him feel protective. Hours passed, and the alien woman showed no signs of waking up. Jake refused to leave her side even when Amy suggested he get some rest. He brought a chair to the medical bay and settled in for a long wait as evening approached. Jake noticed that the alien woman's skin was glowing brighter. The blue tint was becoming more vibrant, and her silver hair seemed to be moving more actively. Her breathing was also getting stronger and more regular. Amy checked her instruments again and found that all the readings were improving. The alien's body seemed to be healing itself much faster than any human could regenerate damaged tissue. Whatever species she belonged to, they had remarkable recovery abilities. Just before midnight, the alien woman's eyes opened again. This time, they stayed open and focused on Jake's face. She tried to sit up, but Jake gently pressed her back down onto the medical bed rest. He told her, even though he wasn't sure if she could understand human language, "You're safe now. You were hurt, but you're getting better." The alien woman looked around the medical bay, taking in her surroundings with curious intelligence. When her gaze returned to Jake, she spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Thank you," she said in perfect English, though her accent was musical and strange. "You saved my life." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. She could speak his language somehow, and her voice was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "My name is Princess Zara," she replied, "and I am the last of my people." 3 weeks after Zara's arrival at the research station, her presence had become a natural part of daily life. The alien princess had quickly learned the routines and rhythms of human existence. She woke with the sunrise, helped Dr. Collins with her marine biology research, and spent her evenings learning about Earth culture from books and movies. Jake found himself looking forward to their time together each day. Zara had moved from the medical bay to her own quarters, but she still sought him out constantly. She would appear at his office door with questions about human history or join him on the observation deck to watch the sunset. Her curiosity about human emotions fascinated Jake the most. Zara's people had been telepathic to some degree, able to sense the feelings of others, but human emotions seemed more complex and contradictory to her. She studied Jake's moods and reactions like a scientist examining a new species. One morning, Jake found Zara in the laboratory staring at a microscope with intense concentration. Dr. Collins was showing her samples of ocean microorganisms and explaining how they formed the foundation of marine ecosystems. "Your planet's biodiversity is remarkable," Zara said, as Jake approached the Mao. "Interconnection between all these life forms creates such a beautiful complexity. On Zirian, our ecosystems were more ordered, but perhaps less creative." Jake watched as Zara adjusted the microscope settings with delicate precision. Her movements were graceful and confident, showing the natural intelligence that seemed to guide everything she did. Dr. Collins excused herself to check on other experiments, leaving Jake and Zara alone in the laboratory. The morning sunlight streaming through the windows caught the silver strands in Zara's hair, making them shimmer like liquid metal. "I have been thinking about something," Zara said without looking up from the microscope. May I ask you a personal question? Of course, Jake replied, though he felt a flutter of nervousness. Why do you care for me the way you do? Zara asked. She finally looked at him with those star-filled eyes that seemed to see everything. You risk your career by hiding my existence from your government. You spend your free time teaching me about your world. You worry about my well-being as if I were your own child. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. The question caught him off guard, because he had been asking himself the same thing for days. His feelings for Zara had grown beyond simple compassion or scientific curiosity, but he had been trying not to examine those feelings too closely. I guess I see someone who needs help, he said carefully. You lost everything and everyone you ever knew. I couldn't just abandon you to figure out this world alone. But there are others here who could help me, Zara said, stepping closer to him. Dr. Collins and Lieutenant Bennett are both kind and capable. Why do you take personal responsibility for my welfare? Jake looked into her alien eyes and saw an intelligence that missed nothing. Zara had noticed his special attention and she wanted an honest answer. He realized he had been fooling himself by pretending his feelings were purely paternal. Because I care about you, he admitted. More than I should probably. You're not just another research subject or refugee. You're someone special and I want to make sure you're okay. Zara smiled and her whole face seemed to light up with inner radiance. That honesty means much to me, she said. In my culture, we value truth above all other virtues. My people believed that deception was the root of all suffering. Jake felt exposed under her gaze as if she could see through all his carefully constructed walls. He had spent 20 years building a solitary life focused on his work and research, but Zara made him want something different. The laboratory door opened and Lieutenant Bennett entered, carrying a tablet with security reports. She stopped when she saw Jake and Zara standing so close together and cleared her throat awkwardly. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but we've got a situation. The mainland is sending an inspection team next week. They want to review our research protocols and equipment manifests. Jake felt his stomach drop. An inspection team would discover Zara's presence within hours, and then everything would change. The government would take her away for study and interrogation. She would become a specimen instead of a person. We need to prepare Zara for this, Jake said to Bennett. Can we arrange for her to stay hidden until they leave? Bennett shook her head. The inspection will last 3 days and they'll want to examine every part of the station. There's nowhere to hide someone for that long. Zara had been listening to their conversation with growing concern. What does this mean for me? She asked. Jake took her hands in his, feeling that strange tingling sensation again. It means we need to be very careful. The human government doesn't know about your existence yet, and we need to keep it that way for now. But why? Zara asked. Surely your people would want to learn from me and establish peaceful contact with other worlds. Lieutenant Bennett laughed bitterly. You don't know human governments very well. They would see you as either a threat to be contained or a resource to be exploited. Either way, you would lose your freedom. That evening, Jake called a meeting with his core team. Dr. Collins, Lieutenant Bennett, and the 3 other senior staff members. They gathered in the conference room to discuss what to do about Zara. The consensus was clear. They all cared about Zara and wanted to protect her, but hiding an alien from the government was extremely dangerous. If they were caught, everyone at the station would face serious consequences. Dr. Collins suggested contacting sympathetic scientists at other institutions who might help establish proper first contact protocols. Lieutenant Bennett proposed temporary relocation to a private research vessel outside territorial waters. But Jake knew that once Zara entered any official system, she would lose control over her own destiny. The human tendency to study and categorize would turn her into a lab specimen regardless of good intentions. I have another idea, Jake said quietly. We could leave. Take Zara somewhere remote where she can live freely without government interference. The room fell silent as everyone considered this option. It would mean abandoning their careers and lives to protect someone they had known for only 3 weeks. That night, Jake walked with Zara along the station's perimeter deck. The ocean was calm and phosphorescent. Plankton created trails of blue-green light in the water below them. "I heard about your meeting today," Zara said. "You are all risking much for me." Jake stopped walking and turned to face her. The moonlight made her skin glow more brightly, and her silver hair moved like liquid starlight around her shoulders. "You're worth the risk," he said simply. "I won't let them turn you into a laboratory subject." Zara stepped closer until she was standing just inches away from him. Jake could smell something like ozone and wildflowers in her alien scent. "There is something I must tell you," she said softly. "My people had abilities. Beyond what you know, we could sense the emotions and intentions of others, and I have been sensing yours." Jake's heart began to race as he realized what she meant. Jake's breath caught in his throat as Zara's words sank in. She had been reading his emotions all along and knew exactly how his feelings for her had been changing from protective to something much deeper and more complicated. "What have you sensed?" Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Zara's starry eyes searched his face in the moonlight. "At first you felt pity for me, and a strong desire to protect someone who was hurt and alone. But over these weeks, your emotions have become more complex. You care for me as a guardian cares for someone in their protection, but there is something else growing alongside that. Care." Jake looked away, feeling exposed and embarrassed. He had tried so hard to keep his inappropriate feelings hidden, but apparently there was no hiding anything from someone with telepathic abilities. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know it's wrong. You've been through enough trauma without having to deal with unwanted attention from your rescuer." Zara reached up and gently turned his face back toward hers. Her touch sent that familiar tingling sensation through his skin. But this time it felt different. More intense and purposeful. "You misunderstand me." "Jake Morrison," she said softly. "I am not troubled by your feelings, I am honored by them." Jake stared at her in confusion. "What do you mean my people believed that emotions were sacred things that should never be suppressed or ashamed of?" Zara explained. "The fact that you care for me beyond simple duty shows the goodness of your heart. But there is something you do not know about what I have been sensing." She paused, and Jake could see her gathering courage for whatever she was about to say. "Your emotions toward me are not one-sided," she said. "Quietly, I have been sensing them so clearly because my own feelings echo and amplify them. We are what my people would call resonant souls." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Resonant souls meant that Zara had feelings for him too. But that seemed impossible given their differences and circumstances. "You can't mean that," Jake said, stepping back. "You're a princess from an advanced civilization, and I'm just a middle-aged human researcher. We barely know each other, and you've been through terrible trauma." Zara followed him as he backed away, her expression serious and determined. "Age means nothing to my people," she said. "We live for centuries and judge compatibility by the harmony between souls, not the years someone has existed. Species means nothing when two beings understand and care for each other. And trauma does not diminish my ability to recognize genuine connection." Jake felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling as he looked into her alien eyes. He had spent weeks telling himself that his feelings were inappropriate. But now Zara was telling him that she shared them. But what kind of future could we possibly have? Jake asked desperately. "You're an alien refugee and I'm hiding you from my own government. We don't even know if we're biologically compatible." Zara smiled and her whole face seemed to glow brighter. "My people were explorers and scientists for thousands of years," she said. "We learned long ago that love finds a way to overcome any obstacle. The heart does not concern itself with politics or biology when it recognizes its match." Before Jake could respond, the station's emergency alarm began blaring across the facility. Red warning lights flashed, and Lieutenant Bennett's voice crackled over the intercom. "System, all staff report to stations immediately. We have multiple contacts approaching from the southeast. Unknown vessels requesting permission to dock." Jake and Zara ran toward the command center, where they found Bennett coordinating with the night watch crew. The radar screens showed 3 fast-moving boats heading directly for their position. "They're not responding to our identification requests," Bennett said grimly. and they're jamming our communications with the mainland. This doesn't feel like a routine inspection. Dr. Collins burst through the door carrying an emergency bag, medical supplies, and portable equipment. She explained, I've been monitoring military frequencies, and there's been chatter about an unidentified crash in our area. From 3 weeks ago, Jake felt ice in his veins as he realized what was happening. Somehow the government had learned about Zara's arrival, and they were coming to collect her. The inspection team story had been a cover to keep them from running. How long do we have? Jake asked. Bennett checked her instruments, maybe 20 minutes at current speed. Jake turned to Zara, whose face had gone pale with understanding. They found me, she said quietly. The Devourers had tracking technology that could follow energy signatures across space. Your government must have detected my ship's crash. We need to get you out of here, Jake said, grabbing her hand. Come on, we'll take the research submarine and get you to international waters. But Zara shook her head. If I run, they will assume everyone here helped me escape. Your friends will be punished for my presence. I will not allow that. The approaching boats were visible now through the command center windows. 3 sleek military vessels cutting through the ocean at high speed. Jake could see armed personnel on their decks and his heart sank. There has to be another way, he said desperately. Zara walked to the window and stared out at the approaching vessels. Her silver hair began moving more actively, and her skin glowed brighter as if she was drawing on some internal power source. There is one possibility, she said quietly, but it would change everything for both of us. What are you talking about? Jake asked. My people had technology that your species has not yet discovered, Zara said, turning to face him. We could share consciousness temporarily, allowing 2 beings to experience complete unity of thought and emotion. Jake didn't understand the implications, but he could see that Zara was deadly serious. What would that accomplish if we are truly resonant souls? As I believe, then the joining would create a permanent bond, she explained. We would share memories, experiences, and abilities. It would make me partially human, and you partially Zirian. The boats were getting closer, and Jake could hear helicopter rotors in the distance. There was no time for careful consideration or debate. The government forces would be boarding the station within minutes. Would it hide you from their detection? Jake asked. Not hide me exactly, Zara said. But it would change my energy signature enough to confuse their equipment, and a bonded pair has certain protections under the ancient laws that govern interaction between species. Jake looked around the command center at his friends and colleagues who had risked everything to protect Zara. Dr. Collins was monitoring government radio frequencies while Lieutenant Bennett coordinated defensive positions. None of them deserved to be punished for his decisions, Jake said. Zara's eyes widened. Are you certain once the bond is formed it cannot be undone? We would be connected for the rest of our lives. The sound of boots on metal announced that the government forces had reached the station dock. Jake could hear orders being shouted and equipment being unloaded. I'm certain, Jake said, taking both of Zara's hands in his. Zara closed her eyes and began speaking in her musical alien language. The words seemed to resonate through the air itself, making the equipment in the command center hum with sympathetic vibrations. Her skin grew brighter until she was glowing like a blue star, and her silver hair began floating around her head as if she were underwater. Jake felt a strange sensation building in his chest, like electricity gathering before a lightning strike. The tingling feeling he had experienced whenever he touched Zara intensified until his whole body was humming with energy. Look at me, Zara said, opening her starry eyes. This will be intense, but do not let go of my hands. No matter what happens. Jake stared into her alien gaze and felt himself falling into those depths filled with swirling galaxies. The sensation was like diving into warm ocean water, but instead of liquid, he was surrounded by thoughts and memories and emotions that were not his own. Suddenly, Jake was seeing through Zara's eyes as she watched her home world burning, the crystal cities crumbling under the assault of the machine devourers. Her father, the king, placing the royal crown on her head before forcing her into the escape pod. The terrible loneliness of drifting through space for weeks, not knowing if she would ever find another living world, but mixed with those traumatic memories were new ones. Jake saw himself through Zara's perception, pulling her unconscious form from the crashed ship, sitting beside her medical bed for 3 days straight, refusing to leave even to sleep. teaching her about Earth with infinite patience and kindness. The way his emotions had evolved from protective concern to something deeper and more personal. And then Jake was experiencing Zara's alien abilities directly. He could sense the thoughts and feelings of everyone in the command center. Dr. Collins was terrified but determined to protect Zara. Lieutenant Bennett was calculating defensive options while simultaneously planning escape routes. The other staff members were confused and frightened but united in their loyalty. The bonding process intensified, and Jake felt his own memories and experiences flowing into Zara. She was seeing his childhood growing up near the ocean, his decision to become a marine researcher, the loneliness of a life dedicated to work instead of relationships. The instant protective instinct he had felt when he first saw her injured in the escape pod. Through their shared consciousness, Jake could feel Zara's joy at discovering that his feelings for her were as deep and genuine as her own. The resonance between their souls was creating harmonies that neither of them had expected, beautiful complex emotions that were greater than the sum of their individual parts. The glow around Zara was spreading to Jake now, and he could feel fundamental changes happening in his body. His human DNA was being modified by Xerion genetic patterns while Zara's alien biology was incorporating human elements. The process was creating something new. A hybrid consciousness that belonged to both species and neither. Heavy footsteps in the corridor announced that the government forces had entered the station building. Lieutenant Bennett moved to the command center door and activated the magnetic locks, but they would not hold for long. Almost finished, Zara whispered through their mental connection. Hold on, just a few more seconds. Jake felt the bonding process reaching its climax as their two consciousness merged completely for one transcendent moment. He experienced perfect unity with another being, sharing not just thoughts and memories but the very essence of what made Zara who she was. At the same time, she was experiencing his humanity with all its flaws and strengths. Then the sensation began to settle into something more manageable. Jake was still himself, but now he carried part of Zara within his mind and heart. He could sense her presence there like a warm light in his consciousness, and he knew she was experiencing the same thing. The glow around them faded to a soft shimmer and Zara opened her eyes. They were still filled with stars, but now Jake could see flecks of human brown mixed in with the alien silver. Her skin had lost some of its blue tint and taken on a more human coloration, though she still maintained an otherworldly beauty. Jake looked at his own hands and saw that his skin now had a faint luminescence. The changes were subtle, but he could feel that his body was different, stronger somehow, and more alive than it had been before. The bonding is complete, Zara said aloud, though Jake could also hear her voice in his mind. We are no longer separate beings. We are something new. The command center door exploded inward as government soldiers used cutting tools to break through the locks. A dozen armed men in tactical gear stormed into the room, followed by officers in military uniforms. Everyone on the ground. A commanding voice shouted, "We are here under federal authority to investigate reports of extraterrestrial contact." Jake stood protectively in front of Zara as the soldiers surrounded them. Dr. Collins and Lieutenant Bennett raised their hands, but remained defiant in their postures. You're making a mistake, Jake said calmly. There are no aliens here. A man in a colonel's uniform stepped forward, carrying a device that looked like a sophisticated scanner. He pointed it at Zara and frowned at the readings our satellites detected. An alien energy signature at this location 3 weeks ago, he said. The signal was consistent with advanced extraterrestrial technology. Jake felt Zara's hand slip into his, and through their bond, he could sense her drawing on new abilities that came from their merger. She was somehow masking her alien energy patterns by blending them with his human life signs. The colonel's scanner was showing confused readings that didn't match what his intelligence had told him to expect. Jake and Zara appeared as two humans with unusual but not impossible biological signatures. Search every inch of this facility, the colonel ordered his men. If there's an alien here, we will find it. But after 2 hours of intensive searching, the government forces found nothing. The wreckage of Zara's ship had dissolved completely in the ocean within days of the crash, leaving no physical evidence. Her alien technology was beyond human understanding, and had returned to the basic elements of the sea. Jake and Zara stood together watching the military teams pack up their equipment in frustration. Through their mental bond, they shared quiet satisfaction at having protected their friends and their love from those who would exploit both. As the government boats disappeared over the horizon, Jake turned to Zara and saw his own joy reflected in her star-filled eyes. They had found something that transcended species and planets, a love that had literally changed them both at the molecular level. Now we begin our real journey together, Zara said, taking his hand. Jake smiled and felt the warm presence of her consciousness embracing his own. Together they walked toward whatever future awaited a human marine biologist and an alien princess who had become something entirely new under the vast stars.